folks, Nick here, and today we're taking a look at a game that's actually been out for a few years, and that is Small World, designed by Felipe Keyarts, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, sir, and published by Days of Wonder. Now, I should mention right off the bat that Small World is actually a reimagining of a different game by Felipe Keyarts called Vinci, which had more of an ancient, realistic kind of combat feel. Instead, he took that game, took the same basic framework, made some changes to the mechanics, and rethemed it with a fantasy theme, kind of a cartoony fantasy theme, and that's Small World. So I will mention also right off the bat that Small World, if you're not that into board gaming, or you're just still kind of a casual gamer, you might not know that Small World is a very popular game and it's kind of become ubiquitous at this point. And a lot of people have a different opinion about it. Most people have heard of it, and those that have played it either love it or hate it. At least that's been my experience. So what the game basically is the classic Euro game mechanic of area control, which is to say that each player is going to get a fantasy race that's going to have their own special power at the beginning of the game, and they're also going to have a separate power badge that is going to be randomized that gives you another power in addition to that. You'll take a certain amount of troops, and you're going to spread out on the board on your turn. You're going to try to take as many territories on the board as possible, because you're going to get points for those territories at the end of your turn. Now, when your opponents get turns, however, they're not just going to let you get away with that forever, and the reason why the game is called Small World is because there's only so much territory on the map. Eventually, your armies are going to run into each other. And when you run over each other to take more territories, whoever loses the battle is going to have to lose tokens, which are troops. And you don't really get them back. Most races don't. So eventually your armies are going to get weaker and weaker, your race is going to get weaker, and you're going to want to put them in decline, which is to say that they're basically dying out. You can't really do much with them. They can still earn you points if they stick around, but you're going to want to take a new race and spread out with from any other point on the map. So essentially that is the trick of Small World. That's what the game is all about. Taking new races, putting them in decline, getting better races, and going out and flourishing and getting as many points as possible. And like I said, some people either love this or hate it. Now, where do I fall on that spectrum? Well, why don't we go ahead and I'm going to show you a little more depth and detail and show you the components of the game. Then we're going to come back and I'll tell you my final opinion of Small World. Alright, so even though Small World is a relatively simple game, there are a lot of moving parts to it, and I can't tell you every single detail in this overview. I'm just going to give you a general sense of how the game plays and what to expect. So at the start, everyone's going to get this really cool handout, which on this one side is going to break down your turn, basically how your first turn is going to go, and then all the following turns. It's going to have the terrain types and the map symbols, and the other side is going to have a cheat sheet for all the different races that you're going to have and what their powers are, and then every special power as well and what that does and what they can do together. And you're going to set out a board, and there's actually two different boards that come with this game that are double-sided. And you're going to use the board that corresponds to the number of players. So one side of the board will be 2 players, one will be for 3, one will be for 4, and one will be for 5. We're going to use the big board on the 4 side, assuming that there are 4 players. You're going to lay out the board, and then you're going to have to do a little bit of setup. So first, you just have a turn tracker up here. This is where you're going to put the crown. Then you're going to look around the board for what are little crosshairs. And wherever there's a crosshairs, you're going to drop one of these little guys, which are the little lost races. These tokens represent races that are basically on their way out. They're dying. They're too weak for anyone to control them, but they're still there and they're still kind of a threat. They're still taking up space, basically. So you're going to put those out and you're going to fill them up wherever they are. Then you're also going to put these little mountain chips down wherever there's actual mountain pictured on the board. That seems redundant, but because the artwork kind of blends in very well, you're going to want these little tokens here to remind you that those are, in fact, mountains because they are relevant to gameplay. The only other thing on the map that should be noted is that there are, aside from the boundaries and the lakes, there are also different little symbols here, which are going to mean different things for different races and power combinations. You're going to have a bank of coins, and there will be 1s, 3s, 5s, and 10s, and everyone's actually going to start off with 5 of these coins. And these are both victory points at the end of the game, so you're going to accumulate them, but they're also going to be what you use to purchase some races. So let's jump right into that. You're always going to have 6 combos available for purchase. What do I mean by combo? What I mean is that a combo is constituted from a race tile, which are this longer tile here, and a special power badge. And so they're always going to fit together like this. So when you have them available to take or for purchase, that's how they're going to show up. One stays with the other. And a couple of things you want to note here. So first of all, this is the names of them, forest orcs. So these are forest orcs. And you've got these two big orange numbers on each side. What you're going to do is you're going to add these two numbers together, and when you take this race, that's how many units for that type you're going to take. So this is 5 and 4, that's 9 troops. So you're going to go to the orcs, you're going to pull the pile of orc tokens out of the box, and you're going to take 9 of these little suckers. And that's how many you get when you take this race. But they have special abilities as well. So first you're going to look at the orc ability. And what the orc ability basically says is that whenever you take a region that is not empty, that has either an enemy unit in it or one of those lost tribes tokens in it, and you actually successfully conquer that region, you're going to get a bonus victory point in addition to the one you would normally have for having an area at the end of the turn. And what the forest says is that for every forest you have under your control at the end of a turn, you're going to get another bonus coin. And these powers do stack. You would get both of them. So that's the benefit of having a power and race combination. So how do you actually get these power and race combinations? Well, in the first turn, nobody has a race or power combination. Everybody needs to get one. So you're going to look, there's always going to be 6 available to purchase or to take at any given time. You're going to decide who goes first, and whoever goes first is going to have their first pick of the races and powers. Now, if you don't want to spend coins, you can just take the one at the bottom of the stack, which in this case is the forest orcs, in which case you'll just take it. There, it's yours. You'll take your units, and you'll take the rest of your turn. But maybe you don't like the forest orcs as much. Maybe you like the mounted giants. If you want the mounted giants, though, you're going to pay for it. So I said that everyone starts with 5 of these coins. If you want those mounted giants, you're going to have to pop a coin onto the orcs that are in front of those giants, and then you get to take them. And whenever you take a race, whether it's from the beginning or the end or in the middle, you're going to slide everything else down and reveal a new race until you've got 6 available. So I'll change the order, it doesn't really matter. But it's going to keep going like that. So if you want, let's say someone takes the giants and they move down, but let's say that the next player wanted to take those skeletons. Well, those are 4th in line. So you're going to have to take 3 of your coins and go boom, boom, and boom. And then you can take your skeletons, everything moves down. But what happens to those coins? Well, if someone else decides they're okay with taking one of these first races and a bunch of people have skipped them over, let's say that orcs, nobody really wanted those orcs, and they've accumulated 4 coins. Well, guess what? Whoever does take those orcs eventually gets all 4 of those coins. Now they have victory points or more currency to buy races in the future. So that's kind of the trade-off there, and you have to decide. And there's all kinds of different power and race combinations. Here, I'll show you a couple other ones. These are kind of interesting. So the humans have the built-in ability that, let me focus here, whenever they take one of these fields as at the end of the turn, they control one of the farmlands. They're going to get a bonus coin. And these are fortified humans, which means that they're actually going to get these little fortification tokens, which are very handy. And when you have a fortification token, you can place one in a region to increase its defense by 1 and collect the bonus coin for it. So that's pretty handy. The skeletons, the skeletons are cool because most races are going to run out of tokens eventually, but the skeletons delay that as long as possible because every time they kill 2 enemy units or lost tribes, they get to spawn another skeleton. And these ones have the heroic ability, which is going to give them this little heroic token. And the heroic token is at the end of the turn, you can actually, there's actually 2 of these heroes, and you'll get to place them in regions you occupy to make them basically immune to opponents' conquests, which is very nice. So all the races basically have that kind of special power and another power from their combo badge. And let's say that I went ahead and just took those orcs. And so that's what I'm going to be conquering with. We move everything else down. The underworld tritons pop up. And now I have my orcs. And I'm going to take 9 of those little tokens. And on the first turn, you get to decide where you come out on the board, but it has to be from the edges unless you have a special race that lets you enter from the coast and so on and so forth. So let's just say I start here, and if it's an empty region, all you got to do is place 2 of your tokens there. That's the base cost for taking a region. But it's very possible that the region is going to have stuff like the Lost Tribes in it. So for every enemy token, whether it's a Lost Tribe or actually another player's race, it's going to cost you an extra one. So I'm going to have to plop down 3 there, and I'll actually remove that token from the board. Put it back in the box, put it to the side, whatever you want to do. And you're going to keep going like that, and every new territory you control, try to control, has to be adjacent to the old one, barring any special kinds of powers. And the mountains are also going to cost for an additional 1, so I'd have to put 3 guys there as well. But the mountains are actually going to give me a +1 defense if someone else tries to traipse into my territory. Because that's what's eventually going to happen, is that your opponent, that's why the game is called Small World. Your opponents are also going to have their turns, and they're also going to try to put tokens down, and eventually they're going to run into your guys, and they're going to try to beat them. And the cost is always going to be penalized by the number of tokens there. So if my opponent had the Amazons, and they were starting from here, and they wanted to get onto, this is where I had ended and left this amount of troops here. I left 3 orcs here on this mountainous region, and my opponent with the Amazons wanted to take over that territory. Well, she would have to pay not only the base 2, but also an additional 1 for the mountain, plus an additional 3 for a total of 6 just to take that over, which would remove all of my guys. I would gain, one of them would go back to the box, I lose it permanently, and I would take the other 2 back into hand. And then she would move all but 1 of her Amazons, because you must leave 1 behind there. And that's basically how combat is going to go. But you get to do all of your conquering all at once before the end of your turn. When you decide you can't go any further, you can just end your turn and score. But you do have one further option. Now, let's say that you have, let's say, for example, my opponent with the Amazons had just 2 units left to try and go, and she wanted to go into at least 1 more territory. But you have to have a minimum of 2, right? Even if the territory is completely open, like this forest land is. Well, she has the opportunity to roll the Conquest die. Now, this is a special die. 3 of the faces are completely blank, but 3 of the faces have a 1, a 2, and a 3 on it. So what do? Well, you're going to decide, you're going to declare, I'm going to try to attack from here to here. You have to attack with at least 1 unit, even if you're rolling the Conquest die. So that's the first thing. And if there were more enemy units here, and you had at least a couple more units, you could try, because you could possibly roll. What's going to happen is you'll roll, and great. If I had rolled at least a 1, that would give me the 2 necessary to move 1 of my Amazons there, because each pip on the die basically counts as a temporary token for you to use. Now, if I had tried to take this Lost Tribe space instead, remember it's 2 plus 1 for the Lost Tribe there. Because of the Conquest die, I'm only attacking with 1 token, so I have to roll at least a 2, and guess what? I fail. Because I fail, nothing bad really happens. I just don't get that territory. I take that token back into my hand, and then you get to do a redeploy. When you totally can't conquer anymore, you don't want to use a Conquest die anymore, or you can't, you'll do a redeploy, which is basically you can move your tokens around and put them onto other places for better defense, because the more tokens you have in a region, the harder it is for your opponents to take. Or you can actually abandon regions if you want. Some races would want you to do that. But for every region you still have total control over at the end of your turn, you're going to score a coin for it, and potentially bonus coins if that's your race's special power. Now, all that's well and good, and I guess that would be enough of a game if that's all that happened. But remember what I said, and that's that when your opponents, or you take over an opponent's territory and knock out his guys, they have to put 1 of their troops back into the box, at least a minimum of 1. But you've only got so many troops. Eventually, you're going to run out. Eventually, it's just not going to be worth it for you to keep going with the same race, and sometimes you just can't if you do not have enough troops to keep sending out and taking more territory. So what do you do then? When your turn comes back around, and it's the start of your turn, and you decide, I can go no further with this race, you put them in decline. So let's say I do that with my orcs. You're going to flip your power token and your race token, your badges, over to the other side that's kind of grayed out. And it's got this little, it's got this little monuments figure here showing in decline. It's the same one that the Lost Tribes tokens have. And then basically every area that I had under control where I have an orc, let's say my allotment was like this, I'm going to flip all of those tokens over into decline as well. And I'm sorry, I got 2 there. What that basically means is that race is effectively done. I cannot take any kind of action with them anymore, no more conquest actions. However, they're still my race, and I still get points for them. So the turn that I decide to do that, I don't take any kind of conquest action, but whatever territories I have with them, I'm going to score the points for. But it also means that their special power is out. So remember that this was the forest ability. Well, I have control of a forest with my orcs, but guess what? My power is no longer active, so I don't get the bonus coin for it. And that race is going to stay there, theoretically, until the end of the game. However, my opponents, of course, are not going to like that, and they're going to want to traipse through there and destroy them as soon as they can. And when they're gone, they're gone. That's what being in decline means. Effectively, they're no better than these Lost Tribe tokens, except they're under my control. But that's not all that I get to do. So when my turn comes around again, now I get a new race. And now I'm going to pick another race from the 6 that are available, and the same rules apply as the start of the game. If I want better race, or not necessarily better, but races further back in the row, I got to pay for them. And I get to enter from anywhere along the edge of the map that I want, unless there's a special ability. So that's basically it, and that's how the game is going to progress. You're going to go as far as you can with one race, until you have to go into decline, and you get another race, and keep going, trying to take territories, trying to get points, trying to knock your opponents out and keep them from getting points, and every time every player in the game has done their turn, you're going to move the turn tracker down. In a 4-player game, once the 9th round is finished, the game ends, everyone counts up their points. One important note is that you can always keep your points secret because the coins are not double-sided. Their one side does not have the token on, the number on it. So it can be kind of hard to keep track of your points, and so it's hard to gang up on the leader. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner, and that is basically Small World. I mentioned that there's some people that just do not like Small World. And what do these people say when they say they don't like Small World? Well, I hear a couple of different complaints. The first is that the theme is just pasted on. Like, that's a very cliche saying. I've said it numerous times in my reviews, but in this case, it could almost be considered literal because this game was Vinci. That was the original game that had sort of a classical fighting feel to it, and literally, almost literally, he just pasted the cartoony fantasy theme on, changed around a few mechanics, and there's Small World. So that's a complaint. I can understand that complaint. Another major complaint is that the game is very simple when it comes down to it. That there is not a lot of deep strategy here. That the game is essentially just optimizing your turn to get as many points as possible, and that the choices that you have are always pretty obvious. In other words, take the stack of tokens. However many are in the stack, 10, let's say 10. Take those 10 armies, put them out in such a way that you're going to get as many points as possible on your turn, while trying not to draw the ire of your neighbors, and so that those tokens can stay out as long as possible. And then determining when is best to cut your losses and put that race in decline. And then choosing a race that you don't have to pay that much for as far as coins, because those are victory points. And, you know, if you're getting near the end of the game, just take the one at the front because who cares? Just try to get as many points as possible. And so, it's definitely obvious what powers are better, and some powers are not as good as others. And so, you know, that's another complaint, and I can understand that complaint about the game. And then more people complain that the randomness, the randomness of the conquer die, and the randomness of the races coming out, because there's a lot of, people, this is essentially a Euro game, and yet a lot of hardcore Euro gamers hate luck. They want luck stripped out of their game as much as possible. So I can understand that complaint as well. So I understand all those complaints and all the other complaints people say about this game. And the thing is, do I agree with those complaints? What do I really think about the game? I love this game. I really love this game. This is in my top 5 games, possibly top 3. I haven't really broken it down that deeply yet. I don't care about any of those complaints. Even if I understand those complaints and understand why people have them, and I still respect the people, I don't really respect them, the people that have those complaints, I still love the game. This is one of the games that I first played when I was getting really hardcore into board gaming, and while there was other games like that I played at first that I really liked, those have dropped off. and I still keep playing Small World. And I still keep buying all the expansions for it. And I just got more expansions. And I can't wait to try them out. So why do I say I understand those complaints, but I ignore them and dismiss them? Well, the fact of the matter is this. First of all, being a simple game is not a bad thing. I can bring this game out with anyone, and I have brought this out to game people who have never played a game before, but they know that they don't want to play Settlers of Catan. I'm tired of that being the go-to gateway game because it's so boring and uninteresting. This game has beautiful artwork, awesome components, and I do think that the theme works for this game. Yes, it is a pace-it-on theme, but it makes sense, and I like it. I like the fact that you're taking these races and going out, and it makes sense that you're playing over a large period of time, and that these races are going to go into decline. These are going to get weaker, and then you have to choose new ones, and it's fun. And the randomness of having the power combinations come out, I like that a lot. I like the idea that you can have flying halflings one round, and then you can have, I don't know, aquatic orcs. I love all that. It's so fun to me. I don't think it's a very simple thing. I think it's really cool, and I think it's really brought out by the game. And that adds a sense of variety. I can't stand it when games are just the same over and over again. So the complaint that you only have a certain thing you can do to get as many points as possible, well, maybe that's true. But you know what? Those powers are going to throw a wrench in those works. Because you never know what power combination is going to come out, especially when you start throwing expansions in. And I will say that this game gets exponentially better the more expansions that you have, the more races that you have to choose from. But even the base game, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of that before you start to get tired of all those different kinds of combinations. And, I don't think that luck is that much of a problem in this game, because still, you have strategy, you have things that you can do. There's a little bit of push your luck in, like, how far do you want to spread yourself thin? But if you want to be safe, you can be safe, and you can just take those chances with the Conquer die if you want, or you can just play it safe. And I tell you, most games of Small World I play are tight. Usually, if you're playing a 4 to 6 player game, you're going to have some people lagging behind, but the top 3 to 4 players are usually very close to each other in points, and I like that a lot. I think that's a definite plus in this game. So I really like Small World. I think that the complaints people have about it are in some ways a benefit to the game. I think that if you are into Euro games but you don't like really heavy Euro games, you want to get into the genre and get your feet wet, this is a perfect game. And I think it's a game that you can bring out with all kinds of people. I think the attractiveness of it is really going to appeal to people who don't normally play the kind of modern board games that we review here on Board Game Brawl. And what can I say? It's a charming game. It's going to stay on my shelf for a very long time, along with all the expansions. And I can't wait to play it again. That's Small World from Felipe K Arts and Days of Wonder. And this is Nick signing off. Have a good day. Game every day and every way.